Well, an emotional Josh Frydenberg has returned to the scene of the Bondi terror attack yesterday, where he lashed Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's handling of anti-Semitic hate in Australia.
We here deserve answers. We don't need pious words of comfort.
For more, we are joined by the former Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, in Victoria. Josh, good morning to you. So you didn't mince your words yesterday. You were out there for more than an hour.
Yeah, it was a very emotional day. Obviously, we've seen 15 innocent lives being lost, including young Matilda, whose name was chosen by her parents after they came from Ukraine because it was the most Australian name they know. I mean, this has been a tragedy of unimaginable proportions. It was Australia's deadliest ever terrorist attack. And what we need to see from the government is accountability and action. We do need a Royal Commission. They supported a Royal Commission into the banks. They supported a Royal Commission to the aged care sector. Now we need a Royal Commission to understand how did this happen? How did people get trained in terrorist facilities in the Philippines? How did they get weapons here in Australia? How were they radicalised in the Islamic factories of hate in Western Sydney? And how are we going to actually turn this around for the future? Because while it was an attack on Jewish Australians at Bondi, it's a threat to every Australian, and it's the same radical Islamist ideology that murdered 88 Australians at Bali and killed Australians at the Lindt Cafe siege.
Josh, I think it was last night on the 7:30 report, you've been accused of playing politics with this. What's your rebuttal to that?
Well, my rebuttal was very clear. This is not about politics, this is about leadership, or the lack of leadership that we have seen in Australia. The Jewish community has always enjoyed strong bipartisan support, from Bob Hawke, who said if the bell tolled for Israel, the bell tolled for all of mankind, to Julia Gillard, to Bill Shorten, and many, many others. But that bipartisanship has been broken, and there were warning signs for the last 2.5 years. And I was warning, others were warning that stronger action needed to be taken. Now, when I take my kids to school, there are armed guards because it's a Jewish school. If you take them to Jewish sport, there are armed guards outside the sporting field. Why should we live like this? And the incitement and the violence has only got worse since October the 7th in Australia. So my message, Carl, is that Australia can be better, Australia must be better, and if I don't speak up, who? And if I don't speak up now, when would I?
When will you, I guess, take that a little bit further? Because, Josh, yesterday you were absolutely fired up and you spoke about how if Anthony Albanese isn't going to lead, then someone else will. Is that person you? Is this a sign that you will take another tilt at your old seat of Kooyong, potentially re-enter politics, so that you can see the leadership that you want for this country?
Well, the next election is 2.5 years away, and I certainly haven't made any decisions about my future. I'm enjoying my time in the private sector and with my family, but what the last 2.5 years has underscored to me is how important leadership in politics is. It can be the difference, as it was, between life and death. And we face many challenges as a country, and we need people who are going to have the courage of their convictions, who have the right values, and who are prepared to take the difficult decisions. So I'll make a decision about my future at the appropriate time. It's certainly not any time soon. But what I will do now, Sarah, is I will use my voice to hopefully create a safer Australia for us all.
So you don't think the leadership is there in the opposition?
No, I do think there is leadership. I think they've differentiated themselves very strongly from the government, and I think they're holding the government to account. I think now Australia is awake after the biggest terrorist attack in our history. But unfortunately, the government is still asleep, and it's not doing nearly enough to actually curb this incitement, to stop this hate, to take on this radical Islamist ideology, and to safeguard its citizens.
We know that there are still obviously details emerging from ASIO about what we did know about this father and son pair, and you've spoken extensively about the Islamic ideology and terrorism behind their motives, right? But you've also tried to link this, I guess, to the pro-Palestinian protests and such that we've seen. You've received backing from the New South Wales Premier Chris Minns. There has been widespread, actually, calls for the protests to end. Do you think that's likely to happen?
I hope it does. I mean, there's a ceasefire, Sarah, in the Middle East, and People can have their legitimate views about Palestinian statehood or the war in Gaza, but what my number one concern is the safety of Australians, of my family, of your family, and our ability to live our lives in the best possible way. And right now, that is not possible, because we have seen our country radicalised. It's not just the hate preachers that have been allowed to spew their hate, but it's also organisations like Hizb ut-Tahrir that are banned in the UK and Germany, but are not banned here in Australia. And then, of course, you've seen people waving Hamas and Hezbollah flags, listed terrorist organisations, and not being prosecuted. And then these protests, which have obviously destroyed lives and destroyed livelihoods. And that is not appropriate anymore in our country. These are not easy decisions, but these are necessary decisions, and we need leaders who are prepared to take them.
Josh Frydenberg, appreciate your time.
Thank you, Josh.